Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 4 Chapter 2, Remembrance. Remember that my reaction to the episode itself will come out the same day as the YouTube release this Saturday, and I hope you enjoy it. Also, same as ever, do not watch this review if you haven't seen the episode. Spoilers are aplenty. So, after a solid opening return for the show's 4th volume, it's time to start truly rolling into what is life like post the fall of Beacon. Team Ranger are on the road, and Jean has spruced up his gear with tributes to Pyrrha. We also see a Shirley special farm boy, some new faces to the villain side, a newly scarred up Cinder, and Weiss back at home, a meeting with Papa Schnee in her future. With a lot of emotions set to simmer, did the episode measure up to the interest, or was it a poor showing? Let's begin the review. Now, given that the episode is separated across 2 scenes, I'm gonna split the focus between the stuff with the Schnees and the stuff with Team Ranger for an easier process, starting with the heiress as she makes her way through the pristine white halls of her home, with some beautiful lighting making everything as richly clean as we'd expect for the Schnee household. Packed to the brim with tons of pictures and art pieces, including 2 knight statues like the one that Weiss famously faced in the past. It's quite the well-directed opening moment. You can easily see how even at home, Weiss feels isolated from the world outside, away from those she misses and the goals that she was looking to achieve. Her solo time is stopped though as we come across this lad, who we can recognize from the intro, and he is indeed revealed to be Weiss's brother, the youngest of the Schnee offspring, Whitley, voiced by Howard Wang, also known as The Exorcist, a cosplayer and familiar voice for Team 4-Star. By the way, as a late note, another Team 4-Star member was in the last episode, Christopher Guerrero, aka General Ivan, who was the blacksmith. Back on track, and remember in my intro analysis where I thought with the guy's facial expressions, I reckon this guy has a warm relationship with Weiss? Yeah, now I'm not so certain. His personality and mannerisms leave me a little suspect of his true intentions, not to mention him seemingly listening in on Mr. Schnee's private conversation going on nearby. Even Weiss calls him out on being different than usual, Whitley just summing it up as him having continued to grow since she last left for Beacon. I just feel like I can't hold much of what Whitley says to his word. He feels like a professional shit stirrer, someone who stirs the pot with fake innocence and warps situations and others for his own gain. He also has this vibe of a spoiled brat or the favorite child, and he even openly admits that he doesn't like Winter, his older sister. Yeah, it's early days with exploring this guy, but you can't help but get an aura that he's another Schnee member that has a lot of unwelcoming tones around him, and that negatively affects the others, like Weiss. Regardless, Weiss's mood isn't any better after her brother mentions that their father has been shouting with someone. Note though that Weiss asks if it's their mother. She's alive, so that's one thing, but she's actually drinking in the garden, so it's not her. But are things that unpleasant between Weiss's parents too, where arguments between them are a norm, and things are so sour that Mr. Schnee's only escape is drinking? All of this just paints this family as dysfunctional as all hell. Heck, it's even clear on a family painting. It's hardly a picture that screams a happy family, with only Whitley and Mr. Schnee having anything close to a relaxed or smiling face. The females of the family are instead a mixture of either sad, uncomfortable, or distant. I just get the sense that at least for these 3 of the Schnee family, they have it the worst. Perhaps Mr. Schnee sees his wife and daughters as pieces that he can use to benefit his goals, while Whitley is shaped up to be the next true heir after him. Once Weiss does step into her father's office, we see that it's actually James Ironwood who is the opposing element to Mr. Schnee's outburst, a friend of the family it seems, and looking mighty sophisticated too in his new gear, even with added stubble. And yes, we finally get to hear Weiss's father, Jacques Schnee, voiced by Jason Douglas, who has previously been Aokiji from One Piece, Beerus from the Dragon Ball series, and even appears in AMC's The Walking Dead as Tobin. Back to the conversation at hand, it seems Ironwood has some plan that he wishes to present to the council, and Jacques isn't too hot on whatever it is, claiming that the council won't either, despite the head of the academy and the military having 2 seats of power within its numbers. Jacques also didn't seem too fond of the current ban on exporting dust to the other kingdoms following post-Beacon hostilities. It makes sense why Ironwood believes this to be a sound move, just to try and blanket the backlash against Atlas following the fall of Beacon, so it doesn't blow into an all-out war. But with Jacques, he's kind of seen it a different way. He is the major player in the dust market, and he is losing a lot of money from this, and whatever Ironwood has in mind next doesn't seem to be making their friendship stop him from having some anger boiling up. Though it is something to think on, the drawbacks of that embargo I mean. With this, other kingdoms are limited in their dust amounts, which could do some major damage if they can't protect themselves properly, especially terrifying once Salem Slot makes their next move. We'll likely see what this other plan the general has in mind is soon enough, at a scene perhaps with the council, but any further information for now is halted once the 2 adults notice that Weiss is in the room. Ironwood sees this as time to go, but he nicely lends an open door to Weiss to come to Atlas Academy once they get back to teaching, so we could see how the education on the Atlas side of things plays out through Weiss's eyes, and we may even see guys like Team Funky again. But for now, Weiss is stuck with one Steam Dad, who right away makes the tone of this conversation clear when blasting the poor girl for her supposed lack of manners. Dad of the year, ladies and gents. The Schnee figurehead is swinging his finger of displeasure at all kinds of issues. Ironwood's actions, Atlas being blamed for Beacon, and of course the losses he's getting from the dust embargo. As for why he called for Weiss though, well, turns out he wants to run a charity concert, which he claims is a way to show unity to the other kingdoms, that Atlas is as much a victim as Beacon was, and they want to stand by them in their trying times, with Weiss singing at the event. Which of course you can tell is a bull-faced lie. You can tell this guy doesn't care about Beacon or the other kingdoms as much as he does about profit and keeping the Schnee name strong in the public eye. This is a clear publicity stunt, aided with having his daughter, who bravely fought in the front lines, right slap dab in the middle, so the people will know all the time that it's the Schnees trying to help the world right now. This is the same person that Weiss cut herself from, because of how imposing he was on her life, and especially on her aspirations to become a huntress and do good with the Schnee name. Now Jacques is actually happy with Weiss's actions only because he sees an angle he can use. He's just manipulating his daughter as a pawn to recover the image of the Schnee name, or more importantly, his own. Weiss isn't stupid though, more than aware of the true nature of this event. Still, when it's clear that Jacques isn't really taking his daughter's opinion into account, she accepts. By the way, note the picture of Whitley on Jacques' desk, and yet I can't spy any on the desk for his wife or his 2 other children. More proof perhaps of how Jacques views his family. At least Weiss has some form of home comfort though, thanks to the support of Klein Seibin, who comes with some hot coffee and a unique trait that the man has. Either by semblance or by hidden talent, Klein can portray different personalities, noted by a change in eye color. With red, he is aggressive sounding and has a small crack at his employer. With light blue, he sneezes and speaks softly. And with yellow, he's gleefully happy. Add them up with his natural light brown eyes, and I think we can safely say that Klein is the singular embodiment of the 7 dwarfs. He showed personalities fitting for grumpy, sneezy, happy, and dark, and his name even means Little 7 in German. It's actually a rather charming notion, and again, it's nice to see that Weiss does have someone who treats her warmly outside of winter. Meanwhile, over in Mistral, RWBY is woken up from her sleep by familiar voices. The closing moments, in fact, of Pyrrha versus Cinder, before RWBY was unable to save Pyrrha. I think it's safe to say that the event is still weighing heavily on the young RWBY's mind. Team Ranger, by the way, are on their way still to Xi'an Village, hoping to get transport to Haven Academy. And we even get some funny interactions along the way, mostly at poor Jean's expense though, for being the only brother to 7 sisters. It's simple light humor with more of the entertaining dynamics that the new group have together, and it's great to finally hear some more information on the Ark family life, even hearing that they are actually familiar with Mistral it seems, having previously travelled here and to Xi'an village. Which makes things a little depressing when the gang find the village is obliterated. The place is a wreckage. Homes on fire, the streets scarred with burns, the bullhead that they were hoping to travel on is destroyed, and there's no sign of life anywhere. Save one wounded huntsman, voiced by Alejandro Saab, also known as YouTuber Kagi Films, and the voice actor for Mayor Zhao in Freedom Planet. The village got hit with a double whammy of a bandit tribe, and in the midst of panic, the Grim. And as much as the others try to think of something to help the wounded man, he soon passes. This is a heavy sight to see for these 4. RWBY tries to keep the spirits up, but Nora is less bubbly than usual, Jean is crushed to see more things lost, and interestingly, Ren is taking it the worst. The guy who's usually so balanced is clearly affected by the sights that he's seeing. The way I see it, this is Ren reflecting at the loss of his home, since we know that he and Nora have no homes to go back to. The two could easily be seeing a similar sight that brings back a painful memory of their lost home, one where Ren can't help but lose his zen-like state that we know he's so stable with. He and Nora also spy an odd marking in the ground, and their response also screams familiarity. I don't think it's a footmark though, rather it's a man-made symbol, seemingly from the bandit tribe that first attacked this village. Would only make sense then that the Team Sloth pair have had past experiences with them, maybe even this group being the ones at fault for their home's destruction. Get hyped folks, it looks like the fabled Ren and Nora focused story elements are on its way. Another night comes, and another nightmare for RWBY too. Pyrrha's voice calling out for Jean snapping out the little red out of her slumber. Only this time, we still hear Pyrrha's voice. RWBY follows the sound through some fireflies and finds the source. Jean doing some late night training, with a recording of Pyrrha providing instructions and support. Yep, prepare the tissues peeps, cause this is gonna be rough. Even now, Jean is still grieving. He's still in pain losing Pyrrha, his friend, his partner, his teacher, and the person who loved him dearly that he couldn't save. Thus why he's pushing himself so hard even now, with continued training, even at night, which does look to be showing signs of progress, given we see waves of force from his slashes. He's looking much more capable now than he did during the early days of Beacon, and he owes a lot of that to Pyrrha. You can hear in her voice through the recording that she honestly did want the lad to become a great huntsman. She saw potential in him that many never did, and it's why she was the perfect partner for Jean in the end, regardless of her romantic feelings. And of course, this is another bit of salt in the wound for her loss, especially with another failed confession, even in death, only for Pyrrha to say that she was so glad to be a part of his life. A life in the end that she was willing to die for. RWBY can't do much to aid the poor guy right now, and with her own sorrowful look, she leaves him to continue his training as the episode ends. And on that sad note, let's go to my overall final thoughts on the episode. If there's one word that I want to tag on to fit this episode, it would honestly be atmosphere. Thanks to some outstanding work done in the visuals and in the interesting dynamics of many of the cast, we got an episode that felt the most fitting to follow on from the tone set at the end of Volume 3. On one side, the lighting again was just wonderful, in big emphasis detail bursts or simple patches and shades to emit the right emotion. This was one of the best lit episodes in the entire series for me. The striking rays in Weiss's home added to the grand emptiness of the halls, which helped for that immersion for Weiss's current mindset greatly, and that serene yet eerie moonlight night setting for the final scene was gorgeous. A nice element with the fireflies, by the way, adding in another layer of mystique and gentleness for the heart-aching set piece, and seeing a conflicted and yet driven Jean at work with shots of light seeping through the forest's shadows was a nice touch to make the whole scenario work as a pinnacle moment for Jean's growth, and for an added punch to the feels box. Alongside that, I applaud the great expressions and emotional displays in animation. 3 of the most standout emotions on display, Weiss, Ren, and Jean, were top notch, to where you can 100% take out all the sounds from these scenes, and yet you could still feel the weight of all the pain on display. And for that to be a thing more than once in the episode with the same amount of high quality is something to truly congratulate. Fantastic animation there, and the aforementioned trio also had some top-notch voice acting. Well done to Kara, Neith, and Miles, as well as Jen returning once more as Pyrrha, still carrying that torch of compassion for Jean that shines through with her lovely work here. So great to hear her again outside of Chibi. I'm actually surprised we had more with Team Ranger after episode 1, by the way, but it did lead into some decently pleasing playful interactions. The 4, as I've said before, have a great dynamic. Their time together feels natural, especially with Jean and RWBY, a pair that I've always enjoyed seeing together, as their goofy yet kind-hearted natures, with their social awkwardness on top of it, bounce off each other well, which plays into the final scene too. I honestly think that Jean's approach to handling grief will play a big factor into how RWBY does with her own, especially since she's never really had to deal with such issues before, being too young to fully grasp Summer's death, which was the only big loss she faced before Beacon. Same praise goes to the intriguing environment coming clear to us now with regards to the Schnee world. Whitley's a fascinating new element to the dynamic, perhaps even as a future opposing force for Weiss, and I dug where we got out the first conversation between Weiss and her father. Jacques is a dickhead, plain and simple, as we mostly expected, but it was seeing how Weiss interacts with her dad after growing stronger, more confident, and into the person that she couldn't be when under Jacques' presence that was always going to be a big chapter in her development, and I think it played out well, with Weiss notably against much of Mr. Schnee's opinions, but not fully outspoken or confrontational just yet, most likely due to the suddenness of being reunited. The last strong point though has to come with the elements that we glimpsed at with regards to Ren and Nora. In the past, the ninja and the Thunderlass have largely been comedy relief and emotional support in small amounts, but we have all wanted to see something more personal to them exclusively. Now it seems we're gonna be breaching that with their reactions to the destroyed village, which also let us see a Ren outside of his usual comfort zone. We saw him trying so hard to keep his composure and maturity despite the scars of the village echoing something in his past, and the silent conversation that he had with Nora when spotting that mark in the ground already has my interest piqued at what these two could have gone through and what they will soon encounter. It was about time that we saw sparks of development and exploration for these two, and it was another nice feather in the cap for a great, emotionally driven, and well-crafted episode. And once more, I find myself with a lot of contenders for possible voice acting praise of the episode. I will however give it to Neith Ohm as Ren, for possibly his finest work as the character since he took over for Monty. Just having the right adjustments to Ren's tone during the village scene to pinpoint something is off about him without it going overboard or feeling unnatural to the intentions of that switch. Excellent stuff, Neith. So overall, this was a beautifully atmospheric episode. We got a long-awaited interaction with Weiss and her father that also added a unexpected but curious element in Whitley, a cruel yet key reminder for Team Ranger of just how harsh the world truly is, and a powerfully touching and yet painful closing scene that reminded me of a much-loved character lost, but also the impacts that she and her death left behind, with some of the best instances of the visuals telling a lot of the story over audio. Easily my favourite episode of the two so far for this volume, and given this is only just the second episode of the volume, it has my emotions high and the same for my excitement for whatever the RWBY have in store next. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Did it grab you by the feels and grip you, or was it not enough for you? Also be sure to like and fave the video if you wish, Subscribe and click on the bell to know when the new uploads are out, and follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for future video updates, anything related to RWBY, and more. Until next time though, have a good day or good night, and peace out.